Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today's November 12th, 2025. I want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Also want to thank Ellen Burr for introducing me to Jeffrey Lawrence Schwartz. Jeff, where are you calling from?
I'm in Culver City.
How cool is that? We had a ball. At least I had a ball, and I learned a lot in part one on June 25th. And, we were talking about my survey of what the function of music was. And we got around to some of them. But one I just added since then is Edgar Varese. He said it's organizing sound, emphasize timbre and rhythm over the traditional melody and harmony. Any thoughts on that Varese thing, that the function of music is organizing sound?
It seems it's hard to argue with that. I mean, well, I guess it depends what you mean by function.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a description to say that music is organizing sound.
There you go.
But is that its function? It's like saying, architecture is organizing space, but its function is to keep the weather out of your house.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that the second part has to follow from the first part. I mean,
Yeah.
Bach would also say he was organizing sound, or at least it works as a description of, of any kind of music, of, which, may or may not involve the kind of traditional harmony and rhythm that he was trying to get away from.
Yeah, because Frank Zappa in his book describes it well. Again, is this a function or an observation or what? He was in church as a young teenager, and when the choir sang, he noticed that the flames on the candles would move because their air was shifting through the church. And he said, music is air molecule sculptures. So, that's an interesting thing. Is it a function to sculpt the air molecules, or is it an observation that that's what you can do with air molecules? You can sculpt them. So, yeah, it's a forever, I guess my favorite still is there a function of music? And it's no, there is none. There's one moment in your in our discussion that really got me, and it was Carl Berger. And I'm curious your Carl Berger experience. Did you study with him in Woodstock, or you took classes?
Yeah, I did actually. Ellen and I both did. Carl brought the Creative Music Studio back for a little bit, and I went to maybe 3 or 4 of the sessions. They weren't as, I think the 70s sessions would go on for weeks and people would sort of live there. This was all just, sort of a week at a time, and not really a long week. Monday and Friday were really travel days. But it was still an incredible opportunity to spend time with Carl and Ingrid, and also with the guest teachers they brought in, who are really some of the most amazing musicians working now, like Henry Threadgill and Tyshawn Sorey and Stephen Bernstein and Don Byron and so many more. I don't want to leave anyone out, but yeah, Carl, I think, is an unsung hero of the music. Not only did the Creative Music Studio just like bring all of these people together in the 70s and incubate all of these amazing projects, but he's also, once you start looking for him, he's on so many fascinating records. He without, being a big name himself, really, he just sort of is. I mean, he's on. He did arrangements for Jeff Buckley's record. But
I was just going to say of all the people, Jeff Buckley, yeah,
but also for a bunch of reggae records and all of these you know, European free jazz things, but also Don Cherry and John McLaughlin. I mean, he's a real connector.
Yeah. It's like Horace Tapscott's on a what's the woman who sang in the Mamas and the Papas album? The one that's dead.
Mama Cass.
Horace Tapscott is on a Mama Cass album. But Carl, I looked at his film, you know, who he played on. It's amazing. And I was wondering, just aside, do you know Matt Demerit? He's been a saxophonist, and he studied with Carl also. So, you know, it's pretty cool how Carl made an impact on us right here in Los Angeles. And here's the line that you brought up this word radical acceptance, and I really like that phrase. But then maybe that's through Carl. Here's the quote you gave me. The parts of your playing you hate the most are the parts that you sound like yourself.
Yeah, that was something he would say all the time.
That really got me. I like
because
that.
You know, he wanted to play like Bud Powell.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
Monk. Well, I mean, who wouldn't?
Well, that's funny. My friend just released her movie on Bud Powell.
Really?
You got it. Bud Lives. Check it out. It'll be out. There's screenings in LA occasionally. And then back to
Is it a documentary or
it's a documentary. It's called Bud Lives, and it's pretty amazing who's in it. And my favorite part is Tom Schnabel's in it, and he goes, "Why would anyone ever make a movie about Bud Powell?" I go, "Don't put that in your movie," but it fits. It's her personality, studying the most she can. And there's a lot of clips of Bud on YouTube, and she shot a lot of interviews of people, and she sourced the YouTube a lot. But did you see the documentary from 2018 on Carl Berger called Music Mind?
I don't remember if I saw it. I know I think I'm probably in it for a second, because there were definitely camera crews running around when we were doing the Creative Music Studio. Everything was documented. But I don't know if I ever saw the whole thing.
I haven't seen it. I want to see it. But here's the quote that I ended with, saying, "Oh, I want to read you this in part 2 because it reminds me of Carl Berger's quote." And it's a little long. It's Paul Bley, and this was in his New York Times obit. This Paul Bley. "I've spent many years learning how to play as slow as possible, and then many years learning how to play as fast as possible. At the present, I'm trying to spend as many years learning how to play as bad as possible." My solo piano playing is a question in itself. The question is why, and after why comes what, and after what comes when. So it's just like how your thoughts on this, almost saying I'm aspiring to play as bad as possible in regards to that Carl quote as well. You know, any way you want to take that.
Well, I think I never, met Paul Bley, but my impression is that he was, more interested in being entertaining than honest a lot of the time. But so Monday night, I played a improvisation show at the Redwood Bar downtown, and one of the bands had a guitar player in it who showed up like falling down drunk. And this seemed like kind of an intentional strategy, right? Like, I mean, it didn't just happen, like he didn't just forget that he had a gig and have, 5 beers too many, So, I mean, that was a great example, I think, of trying to, not play well as a way of accessing your personality. I didn't think it was, necessarily fun to listen to, and is definitely not a behavior that I would encourage. But
That's funny. I saw Larry Coryell many times, and I saw him play a slide guitar solo at a bar in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He grabbed the beer, drank the beer, used the beer bottle as a slide, and then kind of fell over. And I told his son, who's an amazing musician,
mm-hmm.
I told his son that, and he goes, "That's my dad." And then at the end of his life, Larry cleaned up and became, a Buddhist, or, kind of cleaned his act up. But it is phenomenal that you brought that up. There's two directions I wanted to go. And one is Nadia Boulanger kind of saying that, to reemphasize Carl's quote, she told Quincy Jones, "Your music can never be more or less than you are as a human being." What do you think of that one?
Well, most of what I know about Nadia Boulanger comes from Philip Glass's memoir, which is a really great book, even if you don't really care about his music that much. I mean, it sounds like her pedagogy was, the opposite of, get drunk and not be able to finger the guitar. That the level of ear training and score analysis that she put those kids through, was really the opposite approach. It was really an embodiment of the you have to know everything first, that you can't just like look into your soul and be an artist, that you need to be able to transcribe a 4-part piece in real time, and then analyze the harmony.
But you're saying that's a good thing. Are you saying, yeah, you got to learn how to do it before you can go off and improvise?
Well,
Are you agreeing with her somewhat?
I like John Coltrane. I like the Germs.
Yeah.
They're both,
Yeah.
they both can work, and they can both not work, right?
Good. Yeah. That's the Lounge Lizards heard avant-garde jazz and they go, "We can do this." They're just doing it. And then eventually John Lurie says, "Then I learned how to do it right." And I mean, I learned how to play avant-garde jazz by playing Louie Louie on the piano for 20 years, same song over and over. And I learned I could fake like I'm playing like Keith Jarrett. So what? It's still horrible. One professional avant-garde guy jammed with me once, and he goes, "Dude, you got to go home and practice." And then another guy said, "No, that was great." So there you go. You know the spans there. But this is back to the end of the Paul Bley. He goes, "My solo piano playing is a question in itself. The question is why, and after why comes what, and after what comes when. Of the 5 questions that start with W, what do you most favor or gravitate towards intuitively? Like why, when, what, who, or where? What's the most important of those 5 for you?"
Well, I mean, just practically, right? The first thing is where and when. Like, oh, we have a show Monday night.
There you go. Where and when. I like that.
we have a show at the Redwood Monday night. Okay, what are we gonna do? Okay, we'll do a trio. Okay, who do you want on drums? But it can work the other way too, right?
Yeah,
You meet people and you say, "Oh, let's do something together." Okay, let's
yeah,
find a place to do it.
yeah,
I don't think there's, in terms of like, living as a musician, I think any sort of order can
yeah,
come, right? Um, I mean, if you're trying to ask about the sort of essence of music, I don't know, if those, I think same thing. I think those could also be in any sort of sequence or priority.
yeah. My When I used to ask that question, I hardly ever ask it. But when I used to ask it, 90% would go, why is the most important of the five? And then my one friend who I really respect said, when? It's like, when is it? So of course it's a stupid question, but this is going to silence now, which we talked about in the green room before we started. What's his name? Miles Davis talks about the space between notes. And then you told me, and I still haven't Googled this, that Debussy said music is the space between notes.
I
Is
don't
that
think
what,
I said that, but
but,
maybe
you,
maybe it was
you said,
somebody else.
no, you said something, Debussy said something about space between notes. Anyways, I'll go back and listen. And I forgot to research it, but what we're
Yeah,
talking
that
about.
doesn't WC Fields maybe, but
No, the greatest W.C. Fields is he's reading the Bible and they go, dude, why are you reading the Bible? And he goes, I'm looking for loopholes. Okay, but basically it's Monk said silence is the loudest sound in the universe. I'm going to read some quotes about silence from various musicians, but first, the question is, Jeff, how do you know when not to play? How do you know when to incorporate silence in your playing, especially improvising, but say you're composing a piece?
yeah, I don't compose,
Okay,
but
so you're
but
you're improvising. How do you
right.
know when not to play? Incorporate silence.
Um, I think I'm thinking compositionally, even though I don't write notes on paper, that I'm aware of what's happening around me and asking what it needs at any particular time. And sometimes what's there is already plenty.
Yeah. So it's a question of listening.
Yeah, listening
Yeah.
and thinking about the totality.
Yeah.
What does this I mean, I'll sort of think about it like an abstract painting. Like, does it need, what can I add to this, arrangement? Does it
Yeah.
need, some little specks? Does it need a big swipe? You know, um, Often it's fine as it is.
Yeah. Okay, I just realized my brain went bad. I interviewed this other guy a couple days ago, a musician, and he told me that WC said that music is a space between notes. I have
Who
to.
was it?
He's a very interesting guy. He's called Classical Nerd. He's got these YouTube videos where he just explores all the I forgot his name. I'll email you a link, but he's very intelligent music guy. And I was just like, wow, that's the line I used that Miles said. But here's a couple other ones. George Clinton said funk is the absence of. And I love Monk saying silence is the loudest sound in the universe. But here's Roscoe Mitchell. Silence is perfect. Any comment?
No, he's right, but obviously, he feels the need to make sounds, you can't live in, uh, a state of, perfection. It would be like meditating, 24/7 or something.
Here is A Wee Wee, the Chinese artist. For me, silence is music. You'd agree with that?
It can be. I mean, I think there's the element of intention, right? Like you were talking,
Yeah.
you read that thing from Perez about organized sound. It's like, art that uses appropriation, right? Like right, the soup cans in the grocery store are not art, right? But that imagery, or the urinal in a plumbing store is not art, right? It needs to be organized by an artist to be meaningful, and I think that's true for the silence as well, right?
Yeah, that's good. I see Warhol's face on your bookshelf there, and it reminded me of Lily Tomlin's play where she's holding a can of soup and she goes, "Soup art, soup art." Okay, 2 more silence quotes. Jeff, thanks. Bob Dylan, experience teaches that silence terrifies the most.
I'm guessing that the context for that, right, is that people are always asking Dylan to, like, give them the secret and explain what everything is about, right?
And he goes, "Are you a poet?" And he goes, "No, I'm a trapeze artist." Okay, here's the last one. Thomas Carlyle. Speech is of time, silence is of eternity.
Well, it's like we were saying a minute ago about the Roscoe Mitchell thing, right?
Yeah.
That you know you 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 can't live in the sort of state of perfect nothingness forever. Something has to happen.
Really good, Jeff. Now we're going to time. In the James Joyce Finnegan's Wake world, we kind of distinguish the ear is time, the eye is space. But whatever. Why is 4/4 time the most commonly used time signature in Western music?
I have no idea. I mean, people will say, "Oh, we have 2 legs," but then you listen to Balkan music, and it doesn't work that way at all. Um, yeah, I have no theory for that.
That was good, Jeff, because in fact, that was one of the things that Wayne Pete most impressed me. He goes, "We have 2 hands and we have 2 feet, 4/4 time." But here's some of the thoughts, and you can play off.
Well, just to explain the Balkan music thing, right?
Yeah.
Is that there's usually like an extra beat in each bar at the end of a phrase, and that's where the dance turns around. So if you've been doing it with the left foot lead, and then there's a bar of 5, then you do the whole thing with the right foot lead, and then there's a bar of 5, and it goes the other way.
Wow. That's good to know, because here's a couple thoughts.
Right. If you're ever invited to a Balkan dance party, now you know what to do.
I'm a dancing fool, because Besides being intuitive and easy, one said it might be because it's in sync with our heartbeat rhythm. What time signature you think our heartbeat rhythm is?
Carl said it was 5.
Did he really? 5? Oh,
Yeah, because there's like a long and a short, like a 3 and a 2.
and so, that's another. People go, it's not 4/4, it's 6/5/8, or it's 3/4, 3/4, or it's 6/8. But like I said, Wayne Pete said, because it's in sync with our walking, our marching.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Captain Beefheart. He varied from what he called the mama heartbeat, the same old 4/4 rhythm. He said it's related to fascism. It's so fixative, so hypnotic, so synthesized. It's faster than the heart. Disco is dangerous. He wanted non-hypnotic music to break up the canatonic state. Any thoughts on Don's thoughts on
Well, he sounds like Adorno, right?
Oh, wow, that's a good observation. So what did Adorno say?
Well, I don't have a pithy quote, but he really embraced serial music because the sort of regularity of rhythm or of harmonic resolution was authoritarianism.
Yeah.
Just like Captain Beefheart said, and he contrasted it to Stravinsky's use of like folk materials, which he thought was kind of reactionary. It was a kind of that kind of modernism which starts like with a clean slate.
So you're saying he dissed Stravinsky for ripping off the folk music?
Well, not for ripping it off, but for using sort of backwards looking elements in his music instead of creating a completely new vocabulary the way the serialists did. It's in the book Philosophy of Modern Music. I'm giving a bad summary of that book.
No, but dude, I much rather humans tell me information instead of doing pithy quotes, because I do pithy quotes too much. And people like, just put in your own words. That's what I rather hear, Jeff, is you telling me what you got from Adorno, because the next guy might have got something different. I don't know if Beefheart liked Adorno, but he liked Philip Larkin. And the best Beefheart line was they were talking about literature, and he goes, "What do you think of Joyce?" And he goes, "Joyce who?" Okay, so Frank Zappa said it is unnatural to play in 4/4 time because you don't speak in 4/4 time.
I'm not really comfortable with arguments based on nature.
Yeah.
I feel like our understanding of nature is itself, culturally constructed. I mean, we just had an argument about whether or not 4/4 was natural.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not natural to play the guitar. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And so and I mean, Frank would know as, better than most people that, polyrhythms and polymeters are a thing. There's tons of music that's, speech based, that's in 4/4, like all of hip hop and most of Gilbert and Sullivan.
Wow, that's a great observation. That's Todd Rundgren's hero. But that's I mean Gilbert and Sullivan. But yeah, it reminds me of Messiaen. He imitates the Byrds. Well, actually, who else? Eric Dolphy and Sun Ra both said, who influences you? And he said the birds and the crickets. But I like that South American composer. He's looking out his window trying to figure out what to put on the music, and he looked at the edge of the mountains, so he drew the notes like that. And there's a PBS commercial that has the composer sitting there with his music paper, and he looks out the window and he sees the birds land on the telephone wire, and then he writes it down. Okay, Jeff, this is Ben Ratliff. He wrote a book on Bill Frisell, and he wrote, this is what he says: I mean sound as it is long functioned among jazz players as a mystical term of art. As in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note. So me and you can hear Miles Davis and go, oh, that's Miles, in a couple notes. Ben described it in 2 words: fragile and pointed. Coltrane, slightly undercooked and urgent. If a music writer you really respected was going to summarize Jeff's bass playing as an improv, experimental musician, what 2 words would you go, hey, that person got me?
I don't think that I can choose that, I mean, I try to be appropriate for every situation,
Yeah.
So that's
well, appropriate, that's 1 word.
Yeah, that sounds kind of weak, but
well, then do 1 word that's sort of punchy that you would.
Yeah, but I'm trying to avoid
choosing
the words that describe my sound. I mean, I mean, one of the things that makes Bill Frisell great, right, is that he can play with anybody and he always sounds like himself.
Yeah.
And to be able to do both of those things is something else. Like when you heard Horace Tapscott on that Mama Cass record, you didn't go, "Oh, that's Horace Tapscott." Right. But if you know that Bill Frisell is on that Norah Jones record, you'll recognize that he's there.
You're right. Yeah. That's like we believe liner notes. We grew up with liner notes. And then, what if there were no liner notes or no names? Like, my big thing is I like to ask people, who are your 3 favorite funk guitarists? And I love to hear what people say. And this one guy nailed it. He says, whoever played on the Joe Texa records. He didn't have a name. And I says, thank God, it's the cult of personality. It was like, it didn't matter, the name. It was, what was the sound? So here's, Jeff, this is LA Free Press in 1969. They're talking to Frank Zappa. You mentioned Pauline Oliveros' work with sound, above the audible and below, creating a mass. And you like the idea. Here's what Frank said. Not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a some indifference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range. By combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle you could hear. Whether or not you liked what you heard in the middle is another question. The concept's brilliant. Any comments on Frank's thought there, or Pauline Oliveros?
This is Frank describing Pauline's music.
It's Frank describing what Pauline said when she said...
Yeah, that's fascinating. I had no idea. I mean, it's hard to think of 2 sort of more opposite artists.
Right, but that's great, taking again the personalities, because I saw Pauline play her accordion in a parking structure in Santa Monica. And
I was at that gig,
Yeah, she's playing her accordion. I told her all that, and she sort of like poo-pooed it. And I just said, well, I just was wondering your comment. Anyways, a lot of musicians, really highbrow, go, that's bullshit. Or they go, I don't get it. But I'm just saying, I heard that that's how they create, or the the air conditioners are sort of that. There's a high pitch and a low pitch, so that you don't really hear this pitch in the middle, and it cancels it out. I'm always just asking people this, if they can suss it out, this sum and difference tone located within the audible frequency range.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a technical description of what her music does, right?
Yeah.
Or some of her music.
Yeah.
You could probably hear it. I mean, that's like almost everything that Lamont Young has been doing.
Oh, wow.
Is just the, you know, these, you know, these waves in ratios and points where they cancel each other out and points where they rub up against each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not an aesthetic judgment. It's just a technical description of what's happening.
Yeah. What do you think the motive of the cave artist was? The cave musicians, the cave dancers? What's your guess or hunch?
I have no idea. I mean, why do you know? There's a million reasons that people make art. You know.
What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction.
You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
I think ambition, like not in the sense of like, you know, I'm going to be rich and famous, but just like wanting to do something enough to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
That I don't know if we talked about talent the first time we met, but once I started hanging around classical musicians a lot, my understanding of talent really changed. That people think talent means that you just, you know, pick up an instrument and start shredding, right?
Yeah.
But I think that it's more accurate to say that it's having sort of the focus to practice for 6 hours a day, every day of your life.
There you go. Beautiful. Yeah, was the word you said wanting to do it is compulsion a word applicable to that? Or
I didn't say compulsion, but you can.
Yeah, okay. Because sometimes people don't like what I say, luck, skill, and ambition. They go, there's other purpose, destiny, persistence, necessity. But let's just stay on ambition before you go into your second and third. The question, I got a lot of my questions from someone you probably know or read her, was Christine McKenna. I started reading her interviews in the LA Weekly years ago.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I mean, she interviewed everybody, Herzog and Captain Beefheart and everybody. And I just started using her questions. And that was the first two questions I used of her was conviction and compromise. And she worded it, is ambition based more on fear or joy? Your observations in general with humans, is ambition based more on fear or joy?
There was an essay that I read when I was undergraduate, and I thought it was Walter Benjamin's on moving my library, but then I went back and looked at that, and it wasn't this, so I have no idea what it was.
Yeah.
But the author said that he wrote books because he wanted to read them.
Yeah.
And I think that really, you know, stuck with me, although apparently not enough for me to remember where it came from. But
it's a book about Walter?
No, I have no idea what it was. I thought
okay. Yeah, you just
thought it was that essay, but it wasn't that essay. So it could have been anything.
But that, you know, that's on my lit page. That's one of these guys, Elmer Leonard or somebody says, you write to get people to read the next sentence.
Yeah, you know, I mean, mostly the things that I've written, I guess is more true of writing than of music, is that is because I want to read them. I'm like, this is a thing
Yeah,
that needs to exist, and if no one else
yeah,
is going to make it, then I need to make it.
yeah.
That's less true for music. I don't really like to listen to myself.
Yeah, Elmore Leonard said the job of the writer is to get the reader to the next sentence. That's kind of similar, but the funny thing is, Jeff, that most people would say, is ambition based more on fear or joy? 80% of people would say fear. I goes, that's too simple. Then I read Friedkin's Exorcist directory a couple of years ago. He said, in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition. So it's great that you started with ambition. What would you follow it with in your accomplishments, luck or skill next?
Well, I mean, I think skill is a product of ambition. If
Yeah.
you'll let me redefine ambition as, the determination to get good.
Good. Okay.
Um, and then I don't know about luck. I think, you can make your own luck.
You what do you think of this quote I use all the time? The more you practice, the luckier you get.
Yeah, what is that thing where like there's one of these platitudes where it's like about the meeting of skill and opportunity, right?
Yeah,
You can probably pull this out,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, um, I mean, I don't want to discount, the amount of like, luck that I had to be born, like,
Yeah,
in a kind of social situation that allowed me to be a weirdo,
yeah,
um, and to, still have like, a home and food and stuff.
yeah,
But I don't think it's really, that's pretty far like upstream from whatever success I've had as like a writer or artist,
yeah,
like you don't just happen to be in the right place at the right time. You have to get yourself in that place and be ready.
yeah. T.S. Eliot said poetry's outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Um, I think I'm boring. It's just all English.
But what form is your inner consciousness in?
I don't know. I don't feel like I really do that.
No problem. This is two mantras of my film heroes. Ignore yourself. Jonas Mika says, there is no self expression. And Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making, music making more self expression or more your vehicle for whatever technologies, environments, and culture is dominant?
Um, I think um, I think Cecil is underplaying the importance of his like preparation and practice in that
Yeah.
in that quotation. I mean, uh, I have an article coming out. There's going to be a book on Cecil, contributions by a bunch of people, sometime next year. I don't know the press yet, but so my article, my chapter is mostly about his notation and composition practice and how his sort of proteges applied it in their own work. And so I've actually been thinking, quite a bit. And it's, he really composed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He would have pages and pages of these sort of pitch cells. And then he would, practice them obsessively. And even though those performances could sound just like a river of notes, he was working with very specific groupings of material in a particular sequence. So it's not, this not this romantic notion of he just, empties his mind and things flow through him. It's stuff that he's, filled himself with first through composing and practicing. And I think that, that holds for, I think, most of the great improvisers we'd want to talk about, that there is, a lot of, not like planning, not pre-composing a solo the way, someone in a pop band might.
Yeah.
But building your vocabulary and your facility with that vocabulary so you can speak it, when the time comes.
That's Eric Clapton said, "Where'd you get Layla?" He says, "I slowed an Albert King lick down." I says, "Okay." It's evident these guys learned how to play black blues guys and turn it up real loud. All the power to them. But, so what? Okay, so that was good. But I'm curious, can art making, music making be egoless?
Well, I mean, in the sense of like, if you want to stand in front of people and have them look at you, there's probably some level of ego involved. But to be, a successful member of an ensemble, you have to know when to step up and when to step back, when to let other people, have the spotlight, and also what's best for the music, to think about the entirety of what's happening and what your place is in it.
Jeff, that reminds me of when one of the residents died. They put his name and it said supposedly a resident in the title. But that again was an identification, their eyeball. This is Michael App. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just, a friend told me he was going to see the residents, and I'm sort of, I think it's pretty well established that one or two of the, the main dudes are no longer with us.
Yeah.
But they're still, can you just put anyone in those eyeballs? I don't know. I mean, they replaced a couple of the guys in Kiss, and people didn't really care. like for a while, the new Kiss guys would have different makeup, and then they just started putting them in, Ace and Peter's makeup, and it didn't matter.
I love it. That should be the. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question to me. I mean, and like Kraftwerk, like I think there's one original guy in Kraftwerk. But that band maybe less than the other ones, because I think all they're doing is pushing play anyway. But
that band is amazing. I love Kraftwerk because they literally said, "You can use our music for anything and you don't have to pay us."
Really?
Yeah, I mean, come on. That's like, but that's funny because I love the Residents in so many ways.
Yeah, I've
And
been.
they are very unique. They are very unique. And I think the people that they attracted to play in their bands know how to carry on what those two guys created, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to like let go of this question yet,
Okay.
because I do, like, as all of these artists are leaving us, whether it's Cecil Taylor or Homer Flynn or Ace Frehley,
Yeah.
like, to what degree does their music keep getting played?
Yeah.
What's the is a symphony a Beethoven tribute band?
Oh God. Yeah.
Is the like is five nerds playing King Crimson songs, you know, different than four nerds and Robert Fripp playing King Crimson songs? At what point, or does this music just, only exist as recordings when we're gone,
Dude,
when they're gone?
that's the phenomenon of Zappa. You know, I worked for Frank. I've studied him for 6 decades. He put out 60 albums in 30 years. They've released over 100 since he died. And I
Mhm.
love when the comment says, Frank would have never put this out. Look at all the power to him. People want to study it. I don't want to. I don't want that idea. I have enough in my life with 60 albums in 30 years. Not like John Zorn saying, I only like Frank's first 3 records. You're leaving. So go ahead, Seth.
And that's another case. There have been, of course, those terrible legal battles over who gets to perform his music.
Well, that was obsessed lawyer stupid shit, but it's it all boils down to lawyer budget. But in the long run, saw the Zappa band play at Baked Potato. It was amazing. I've seen Stinkfoot Orchestra, a 14-piece orchestra, play Zappa several times in LA, and they're amazing. So it's all the power to them. I can handle that, but I don't like the re-release stuff. I don't like when they take Live Evil by Miles and put out all 6 hours. I only want what Tio Macero edited down. That's what I want. And I hit a button once on YouTube and it played. And I goes, I freaked out because I know what, but this is an interesting phenomenon where we've gotten, Jeff. Michael Apted, I asked him 40 years ago at Vidiots, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it flourished in the 80s with MTV to the point where Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. The question is asked with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
This is an interesting question because I'm also trying to write about John Zorn's Naked City.
Wow.
Which, of course, was a musical version of this, acceleration, right? I mean, you have like recorded projects like, John Oswald, but the Naked City folks could actually do that stuff live, right?
Yes.
And there was something, right? I think it really, it's obviously connected to those kind of fashionable postmodernist writers like Baudrillard and Paul Virilio, right? The idea of speed as an end in itself, right? That you listen to a piece like Speed Freaks from Torture Garden, right? And it's just enough of a musical phrase for you to recognize what style it is or what the reference is, and then it's the next one. So it's not like he's able to say anything about Buck Owens or Steve Reich or Slayer or whatever the reference is, but just enough to sort of excite you that you got it, and maybe a little bit faster than you can get it. And there's definitely something really pleasurable about that. And but I don't know if that's something that is like a 90s phenomenon, or if it's just that they had the technology to execute it then. I mean, there is, I feel like there is like, 60s underground film that's cut, faster than we can assimilate.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
and
experimental. Yeah.
yeah, and so I don't think people's brains got necessarily faster from the 60s to the 90s, right? But it does, people talk a lot about channel surfing as a
Yeah.
metaphor for Naked City's music. And, in the 60s, you didn't have a remote and you only had 5 channels, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing, Jeff.
so I don't know, right? I mean, we could talk about, like, right, we could talk about McLuhan and James Joyce, right? Your guys in this context, right?
Oh yeah. But it's also well,
But
Zappa
that's
has a
not but that's not time sensitive, right? You can read those texts as slowly as you want to and
you
stop
have
and
a
go and look
choice.
things up.
You have a choice. But now, unless you don't know, I have this button on my YouTube where I can do the playback speed faster. And I ask my friends, do you do that? And they're like, no. And I'm like, dang, when I'm reviewing these YouTube, I mean my podcasts, I kick it up a couple speeds. And I know it's kicked up, but it's just I'm doing an assignment and I can deal with it. But the real
A joke at the library was that when Obama's audiobook came out, everyone was listening to it on double speed
double speed.
because of those big pauses he would take.
Yeah.
And then Quentin Tarantino came out with his book, Cinema Speculation. And I haven't checked out the audio version, but I think people might need to listen to that one slowed down a little bit.
Not slow down. He does talk fast. Like me and Marty and him talk too fast. But the hidden question, before I go into a couple of these reactions to what you said, brilliant stuff, Jeff. I appreciate it. I'm learning a lot, and I really am grateful. Is can humans literally multitask?
Well, can I cook dinner while I'm watching your video?
Well, yeah. I mean, people always give me the one. Yeah, you can breathe and write at the same time. But, anyways, in general, what I'm saying, the big picture, can yeah, I guess that you answered it. We can. Okay. Now, you know what Frank Zappa did in the 60s? He did Speed Freak Boogie. So he played a blues song and he put his guitar solo over sped up. So it sounds like he's, shredding, but he's really not. It's the speed of the tape. What's the difference with that and pitch control? So all the people who complain about pitch control, same thing. I mean, supposedly the Eagles sang at the Sphere in Vegas and they pitch control their voices live on stage. Like, oh, that's the end of music. But you mentioned, I wasn't sure the group, Speed Freaks Torture Garden. Which one is the title?
It's a Speed Freaks is the song, Torture Garden is the album. It's John Zorn, Naked City.
Oh, it's John Zorn. Okay. Because I did want to tell you, I don't know if you know him. He lives in Venice, Greg Cohen.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I know who he is. We've never met, but I've
Okay. Well, we hired him for a gig recently. He's going to be on my podcast in a couple of weeks. He's an intriguing guy. I mean,
I'm sure.
I just want to tell you off the bat. I says, you played with everybody, Waits for 20 years. I says, who's the person who had the most impact on you, playing? He goes, Ornette Coleman. I said, who's next? He said, John Zorn, 33 albums. And then, it's Waits, Randy Newman, Elvis Costello. But actually, the second one was Alan Watts. He played music behind Alan Watts. Which is like, I didn't even know it. So this is what you've done with your Jeffness in all your years, because you are also a political activist, you're a essayist, and you play music. You've had all this. Tell me one element that stayed the same and one element that's changed in your overall Jeffness.
Oh, geez. I uh, I wish more of me had changed. I feel like I'm pretty much, the same asshole all the time.
I don't know if that word's needed, but anyways, but is there some sort of theme in your thinking, in your skills that you've noticed has changed in your observations of the human condition,
Mm.
in your music playing, in any of that, one that's stayed the same and one that's changed in any aspect? You put it in the
Well, I think I've become a lot more open to input and advice and so on. That as I've kind of existed as a writer, I've come to appreciate editing more and more.
yeah,
Right. At first, I think like a lot of people, I'd be like, how dare they mess with my, you know,
yeah,
brilliantly crafted prose. But now I'm like, oh, it's really good to have someone else look at things really closely and, point out things you might have missed and, ways that you might have been more clear or whatever.
I like
Um,
that's really
yeah, I mean, I really, yeah, I, I didn't really have that for my first book just because of the nature of the press and the arrangement and everything. And I felt really like, afraid,
yeah,
like how do I know this is okay? And my second book, which was came out with a slightly less prestigious press, they really gave me a lot of good input. And there were a couple of parts where I just sort of, tied a sentence into a knot because there were a lot of lists and sub lists, and uh, I just have somebody catch that and be like, "Dude, clean this
yeah,
up."
yeah.
Was really really valuable. Um,
I like that. I need that myself. And
and
it's
I could
hard.
say the same thing. I could say the same thing about music too.
Yeah,
I don't know if we talked about this in the first meeting, but when I started playing the string bass, I already played like the guitar and the electric bass, and I was like, I could just play this thing. It's E, A, D, and G, right? It's the same strings and same patterns, just a little bit bigger. And that worked for a few years, and then eventually I got in situations where I had to play more in tune or have like a bowed sound that could fit in with a string section. And I was really reluctant to go to a teacher because I thought they would want me to, to start from scratch and just unlearn everything that I had, already worked out. And also I just feared being judged. But eventually I did it, and I did have to do those things, and it's really good that I did them. Um, so I think both of those, experiences, right? Being able to, um, to take input, to take advice, to get, you know, lessons in editing and, um, you know, it's been incredibly helpful. So that's something
it's
that's been
yeah,
a big
that's
big part of growth as a writer and a musician.
yeah, and that's boils down to a great word. To be a great musician, you have to be able to listen. So you listen to the editor and you listen to your teachers. But the follow-up is sort of the similar question. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Well, there's a great story about the clarinet player John Carter, which is kind of the same as the Feldenkrais story, right? That whenever he made a squeak on the clarinet, he would write down the fingering that had produced that squeak so he could use it again if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And the bass player Mark Dresser has really built a whole career out of identifying and cultivating the sounds that you're supposed to, suppress.
Yeah.
So, I try to do that, although not to the,
Yeah.
with the, discipline and focus that those dudes brought to it.
That's the main thing McLuhan learned from the Wake is how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough? How do you turn a rejection into a redirection? And my example I tell kids sometimes is Iggy Pop said his band was so bad imitating the Rolling Stones, they invented punk rock. But they didn't, but it's a good line. I mean, they helped. Jeff, anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
Well, I mean, I think anger is fuel.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, it's I just to make this very personal, right? It's always a good situation for me to sort of have to start with, and this is really more in politics than in music, right? To start with something that's like an angry reaction, and then to run it past people who I respect and trust and shape it into something useful.
Really good.
I could tell a more specific and involved story if you want. The LA County Democratic Party gives out an annual Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt Award to men and a woman in each assembly district. And this year they gave it to a conservative Culver City Council member who had been a Democrat for about a year, right? So I'm like, it's Democrat of the year, not Democrat for a year. But I'm like, well, okay, so besides just being, disgusted by this, this sellout, what can I do about this? And I'm like, well, instead of talking about why he sucks, I'm going to talk about why Franklin Roosevelt is great.
Yes, very
So
good.
that's what I did. So I went to the city council meeting and gave used my 90 seconds of public comment to talk about Roosevelt's 1944 State of the Union address when he talked about the Economic Bill of Rights, which is basically the Democratic Socialist platform, right? That housing and full employment at a living wage and healthcare are, fundamental human rights. And was able to bring Eleanor in because she chaired the committee that wrote the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights and used this as the basis of that. So I saw a guy a friend who had been at that same city council meeting about a week ago, and he's like, dude, you roasted him. And I'm like, I didn't say anything about him. I just said stuff about Franklin Roosevelt, and you filled in the rest.
It's beautiful.
So but my initial response was, I'm gonna build a bomb.
Yeah.
So it went through, with talking to my wife and a couple of friends. I'm like, okay, here's how this can so I'm not just like, Grandpa Simpson yelling at a cloud or something, right?
Or like that other story you told me when the guy did something assholey and then he came up to you and go, hi, Jeff. And you're like, I wanted this guy to die. And the beauty, Jeff, of that story was that your friend got it. It was, he understood. So your mission was accomplished,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And much better than if I had just gone in there and,
Exactly.
just yelled at him. Yeah.
Subtlety and nuance work sometimes, but just well thought out strategies work too. And
it's
so
only subtlety. It's only subtle by comparison to the initial response, which was, violence.
Well, Billy Wilder nailed it. He says, make the subtleties obvious. Okay. Utah Phillips says, anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
That's a really interesting quotation. I mean, I mean, from what I know of anarchism, I would, rephrase it to say that it's rules freely chosen.
Well, an anarchy,
if you're going to live with other people, you can't just say, well, these are my rules, and my rules are I get to eat all the food.
Yeah.
But the difference, I think, between, an anarchist vision of society and most of the other ones is that you have a choice.
Yeah.
You can follow the rules and live in the collective, or you can go somewhere else and try to do something else.
Yeah.
So I mean, what was
well, the wording's bad. First of all, an anarchist specialist told me it's not bullshit, but he says he doesn't really have it. I'm just asking, if I say who should make the rules, who makes the rules? I say who's entitled to make the rules. It's a difficult verb to struggle with what I'm trying to say, because the follow-up question might clarify a little what I'm after. The word freedom etymologically breaks down to making one's own laws for one's own self. So then I say, what does freedom mean to you now? So, I mean, it's evident who's entitled to make the rules, who should. Well, everybody should contribute to making the rules, I think. Don't you agree? I mean, it should be a vote and democratic, but some people go, no. I have to ask that question, who's entitled to make the rules? And the person goes, me. So, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer. I'm just asking the question. But again, I bias the question by the way I word it.
Right. I don't feel like I've read enough political theory to sound smart talking about this.
Yeah.
But I feel like still, especially in this context, the rules that matter are rules for other people. Like, I can decide that I'm going to drive safely, but that's not going to help if no one else makes that decision, right? So those rules need to apply to everybody so I don't get run over.
Exactly. Well,
Uh,
that's
I, I mean, the kind of rules you make for yourself, like, oh, I'm gonna, only 2 cookies, or I'm gonna try to practice at least an hour a day or whatever.
right.
Those are not as consequential as the speed limit or something.
But what does freedom mean to you now? Especially knowing if that's what the etymologically it means. It doesn't mean that's what we think freedom is now, but etymologically it means making one's laws for one's own self. What does freedom mean to you now?
I guess I think of freedom more in the sense of time. Since I've been retired for a little over a year, right? I'm experiencing, not having to go and answer to someone else for 8 hours a day,
Yeah.
as a great freedom. Uh, and part of that is because of the massive rules that accompany those things, right? And just the rule that, you need to do this to get money. But really, I think it's the time, right? Like, we only have so much time, and the fact that more of it belongs to me now makes me feel much freer.
Beautiful. You anticipated this, Jeff. What's the difference between rights and responsibilities?
Uh, Sorry, the responsibilities are visiting. Well, it might be more interesting to talk about this in the context of improvised music, right? To go back there.
Go for it. Perfect.
Like that, right? That it's, I mean, when you're playing with people, you have an obligation to them. But part of that obligation is to contribute,
Yeah.
as well as to not step on them.
Yeah. What's the difference between rebellion and revolution?
I was meaning to reread that Camus book, but I have not yet. Right, rebellion is just it's Marlon Brando, right? What do you got? Just or Laverne and Shirley, right? Show us any rule, we'll break it. But and revolution hopefully is a more systemic change, right? I
Yeah.
don't think the rebel necessarily wants systemic change. They kind of need the system to define themselves against.
Exactly. Because rebellions, there's something wrong. Revolution, there's something wrong, and I have a new plan. Re-evolution. Jeff, what do you do? How do you personally handle false fears? John Basil Barnhill said, when the people fear the government, you have tyranny. When the government fears the people, you have liberty. In 2005, V for Vendetta, the film paraphrased it. People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. There's this thing called false fears, like the war on drugs. Well, you can't have a war on drugs because drugs don't fight, and you can't say no to drugs because drugs don't talk. So you know them, the false fears like war on drugs, war on poverty, war on terrorism. How do you personally handle false fears?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that question. I mean, it's it's a challenge, right? I mean, I'm just going to take this in a different direction, right? Like it's challenging to not be like afraid of everything, because
Yeah.
everything is bad, right? The air is bad, the water is bad. It's just bad,
Yeah.
right? But you have to, you have to find a way to live with that.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Now I asked for 90 minutes. We got 10 more minutes. Can you go another 10?
Sure, why not?
Okay. How do you find peace of mind?
Um, I don't know, you know. Um, I mean, I try to like, sort of control my media input. Um, I don't, really look at the trolls. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, I want to watch Fox, so I know what the other side's thinking," but I know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
I don't need to spend more time with that input. And I also try to take in as much like political stuff as text. Um,
Good.
I feel like it's a little bit more, time consuming and emotionally intense to listen to people talking about that stuff. If it's in print or words on the screen, I can skim it a little bit more. I don't need to
Yep.
experience it kind of in a real time. You know, the only exception to that is like comedians, right? Like
Yeah.
like I can listen to Seth Meyers or whoever and not get pissed off.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I'll also say exceptions. I love the LA podcast with Mike Bonin and Alyssa Walker and yeah, that. But most of the political stuff, I just if I could read it and have it over with in a few seconds instead of listening to it, then that's much better.
Smart move, Jeff. Okay, these are 5 Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. 1, who started it all?
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Let's go to the
2,
second one.
are we going to make it?
Well, someone is going to continue. So sure.
That's good. Where do we put it? Number 3.
Let's pass.
4, who's cleaning it up?
Our descendants.
5, is it serious?
Oh yeah, everything's serious.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think my 12-year-old self was pretty sure of himself. I don't think he really would really need me to tell him that it was going to be okay.
Good.
Um, he might not have been right about the specifics, but that's okay too.
Yeah.
Um, I would like to tell him to stay away from drugs and alcohol. Um, that would have been about the right time to tell him to.
What's a cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I see a lot more politically active people in their 20s, and in high school. When I was, especially in high school, there was no political energy at all in sort of the mid to late 80s. We just assumed Reagan was going to blow up the world and there was nothing we could do about it. So I'm really, just so heartened to see the amount of like youth political organizing that's happening now.
We went to the Venice No Kings March. We thought 40 people would show up. 4,000 people showed up at Abbot Kinney in Venice. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. It was so inspiring. And then Prop 50 passes, and then, the mayor of New York. It's like, is there hope?
Yeah.
Anyways,
and also
it's
just
not a
thinking
question.
about
It's your thought.
thinking about big picture stuff too. Even though things, it may look like it's turning back a little bit now, the amount of progress that lesbian and gay and queer and transgendered people have made has been phenomenal.
Exactly.
When when I was in high school, there was nobody who was out, not even the drama teacher. And when they had the 100th anniversary of Culver City Parade a few years ago, there were high school teachers marching with rainbow flags.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I think of, a lot of my friends who, went through a lot of pain back then that they wouldn't have now.
Yep. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
I think a lot of the sort of unresolvable questions I've just sort of set aside in order to just keep moving forwards. I do think the question of the appeal of fascism is, extremely relevant. And I don't feel like a lot of progress has been made on that since, maybe since the Frankfurt School, right? Adorno and Horkheimer and Erich Fromm. There have been a few developments since then, like Klaus Stevelite's books, but I don't think, and maybe it's not a consistent or universal thing. Maybe it's always contextual, but it does seem like there's some certain kind of structural and sort of socially structural needs, and also just personal emotional needs that draw folks to fascism. It's it's so hard to parse out, like, and it seems like our survival kind of depends on it. I mean, I also think it's not really our job to understand them just to defeat them, but to understand it can be part of it.
Yep.
Right. I mean, one of the very powerful things that Mamdani did at the start of his campaign was to go and find people who had voted for Trump and ask them why.
Exactly. Good.
But a lot of those people, if you ask them why, they'll come back with some shit that's hateful or insane.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot we can do about that. Right. You don't want to be like Gavin Newsom and say, oh, well, you voted for Trump because you hate trans people. I'll try hating trans people a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, that's not valid.
No. And that's raising the question, what is the fascism's appeal, is gets me, because I can't understand why these mercenary ICE dudes sign up for this. Now people go, they need a job, or they're frustrated football players out of high school or whatever. But I can't imagine them turning on their own like they do in such a horrible way. Like, isn't any of them going to turn and go, wait a minute? And that whole thing with cops, they won't squeal on each other. And so it's like, I'm just waiting. Can't some of them stand up and go, this is wrong what we're doing? My aspirations, my hopes are a little too. So Jeff, you've really engaged in books and writing, reference library, and music. Let's just summarize that part, books, writing. How has that shaped your behavior? And how has music shaped your behavior?
Well, the music writing is, for me, really connected to playing, and vice versa. That if I'm drawn to some music and I want to understand it, then it's like, well, what can I get from listening to Cecil Taylor that I could use? Right. So part of that is to understand what Cecil's doing, to see if I can get together with some folks and channel a version of that, and then to digest it until it sounds like me, and no one is going to say, oh, you're copying some Cecil Taylor business there. So that's right. I mean, it's like, you go to a restaurant and you have something amazing and you're like, wow, is that amazing? Oh, there was some cardamom in it. And then you go home and you try to make it. And then, maybe you get really good at that and you write a cookbook. Right. So that's kind of how that fits together. Right. The political writing was a little bit more of an organic development. That when I became president of Culver City Democratic Club, one of the responsibilities I inherited was to write a president's message every month for the newsletter. And those were originally what the presidents before me had done. They were just like a couple hundred words. And, maybe just like, oh, here's a terrible thing that Trump did. Here's the rally. And we have some new t-shirts. Send me $20. But it became apparent to me pretty quickly that I had more to say, and that it also seemed sort of intriguing to me as someone who had read all of this cultural theory, to see if I could like apply this. Like, oh, can I bring can I bring Baudrillard to bear on this, insane political advertisement that just came out or something, without like telling people that's what I'm doing necessarily, So that became like a whole thing. And also to excavate a little bit of the history of Culver City in my writing. No one else had done it. And there's so many great writers who've done that sort of thing for LA. Mike Davis and Joan Didion and Jonathan Gold, and also Rebecca Solnit, who you mentioned. She has that great book, Hollow City, about gentrification in San Francisco. And then also, as I'm doing this, Heather Cox Richardson is becoming a star.
Oh yeah.
And the way that she's able to use her deep knowledge of 19th century American history in particular to create a context for what's happening now. I'm like, oh, I could do a little version of that.
It's good.
So that things don't make. I mean, it's hard to understand stuff without history. So I wrote a big essay about in 1993, Culver City hired one of the cops who had beaten up Rodney King after he was fired by LAPD.
Yikes! I didn't know that.
Yes, right. So, well, I mean, it was what, 30 years ago. So so to tell that story, seemed important. So things like that, right? So that sort of grew organically. And after doing it for 4 years, I have like 60,000 words. So I'm like, oh, this is a book, and I got to find a place to put it. So I'm, looking for a publisher in case anyone is listening to this who publishes Californiana.
Really good, Jeff. I wish you luck in that project. That's what we in Venice, I have a lot of pride in just being in Venice for 45 years. And we have the Venice Heritage Museum, and it's horrible because we might have to close because there's no money to these outrageous rents. But I've done 17 salons there, and now I'm kind of doing them at the Venice Library also. And I really should have you come and do one in Culver City and like compare Venice and Culver City a little. It would be like a good contrast because I love your whole sensibility of political involvement in your own city, your activism. Like there's a line that goes, bloom where you're born. You blossom where you're raised. Okay, two more and we're out of here. This is Thornton Wilder in 1928. Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for hours. I appreciate this. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered it. What's it really all about for you?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I think, like I said before, I mean, you used the word compulsion, and I think that's right. I mean, I think you just do these things because they emerge and you have to do them.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you write the book because you want to read it and no one else is going to write it for you.
Yep.
And same thing, like I was saying about improvisation, right? Like, what does the music require at this moment?
Yeah. That's Bruce Conner, the great experimental filmmaker, said the same thing. I didn't see anyone making this kind of film, so I made it. You got to have courage and compulsion, or you just got to be able to realize that, like I think I said last time, Warhol said, don't worry about what people think of your art. Just keep making it, and if you're driven to make it, make it. What gives you?
That's extremely uncharacteristic because like this is just all about him obsessing about like, oh, do they like me? Oh, do they like me? Are they gonna buy the portrait? Oh, I think they don't like me.
I know, but the thing about all my quotes are they're pulled out of context, and I realize sometimes it's better not to say who said it, because I know I get in trouble with some of these people. They're like, if that person said that, I would never believe it. So anyways, I just like the idea that you can make art, you can be compulsive or obsessed with anything and not have too much of this like David James calls it commodity cinema or commodity
Right. No, it's
culture.
fascinating to think of also about Warhol, like seeing himself
Yeah,
as a kind of like macho individualist, like
yeah,
I'm gonna make it and I don't care what they think. Like he's
yeah,
like Will de Kooning, when really he's the opposite of that. When he's like making multiple pictures of
yeah.
the Shah of Iran because he thinks that he'll get paid really well for them.
He's definitely a complex character. I've watched almost
Yeah.
every doc on him, and that last doc was amazing because it was
The
supposed about all his gay lovers, and it was basically one of the best docs ever because the guy had like
yeah,
$80 billion to make films for Netflix, and he got the best people, and he made a good film. So
yeah,
he's
that was brilliant. And
yeah,
they used it's one of the few like really sort of interesting uses of AI because they somehow
yeah,
processed the narrator's voice to make him
yeah,
sound more like Warhol, which
yeah.
I wanted to mention to you. I don't know if you know this phenomenon. Maybe if not, you should Google it. But apparently, there's a blight of AI generated fake Alan Watts lectures.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a phenomenon, and I've heard probably the best thing on KPFK. They said AI is in its early stages, and it's our job to raise it well. So it's not going to go away. We've had various versions of it from day one. When we invented language, you know. Anyways, the last question, Jeff, has this really been fun? What gives you the most optimism?
hmm. Well, on one hand, right, I want to quote like Gramsci, right, like pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will, right? That you just have to kind of generate it yourself and, will yourself to keep moving forwards, even when the evidence doesn't support that.
Yeah.
But more practically, right, is just, you know, Monday I was at the Redwood for this noise improv show, right? There were all these like interesting people like schlepping out to downtown LA on a Monday night to hear
Wow.
a bunch of I mean a bunch, 20, but still. And then last night I was at a book club at Village Well and it was full of all of these like super smart, young, fired up people, and people are just going to keep doing it.
Well, you really nailed it because the first question I asked at the beginning of part one was what is the best thing for a human being? Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. The last question I ask is what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life, and he said other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Jeff. Thank you so much, and I do hope we can meet in person someday. Let me know when you're playing in Venice, because like we say in Venice, there's no life east of the boardwalk.
Damn, I thought you were going to say Lincoln.
That's what you're supposed to say. No, I say there's no life east of Speedway sometimes. But anyways, I wish I was still booking Sponto Gallery because it was the kind of spot we could book you guys. We had, a lot of great avant-garde jazz there too, and Beyond Baroque, I book there sometimes, and that's a great venue for your kind of music and my kind of music too. So, thanks again, Jeff. I really appreciate this. I learned a
Yeah,
lot.
thanks for having me back.
Yeah, and even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, like I said last time, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
All right, see you soon.
Thank you.